up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down. Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down.
Shout out Young Swish.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sit-Down Morning Show with Malik Wright. Obviously, this morning I am not Malik Wright, but I'm Daniel Alameda, and I will be joined by my co-host talking fantasy football in a little bit. We got Michael Hara, we got Steve Bradshaw, and we have UFC with 𝗦𝗡𝗙𝗍 in a little bit as well. But as always, this show is presented by the Right Way Sports Network, and if you guys want any more of our content, make sure you guys like this video, click the subscribe button, and also turn on post notifications as we go live Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We've got a couple things to discuss this morning, right? We've got a little bit of Bengals versus Bills talk I want to discuss. We've got some predictions for NFL Week 14, and then we got our fantasy football questions. So once again, fantasy football playoffs are here or approaching. And if you guys have any questions on what your team should be doing, on who you should pick up, who you should start and sit, drop them down in the comments section below, and our guys will get to them. But I want to start it out with the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals real quick. And the topic I wanted to discuss was the head coaches, right? It was Sean McDermott. It was Zac Taylor. And I see it all over social media. I see people discussing the head coach. We've discussed Zac Taylor at a nauseating pace at the State of the Jungle every Wednesday. But the truth of this conversation is it's got to happen, right? And the reason why this conversation has happened is these two guys are kind of two peas in a pod in some instances, right? And the main focal point that I want to point to with these guys is you can point to and say they're solid head coaches. Sean McDermott, for example, has won a playoff game in each of his past 6 seasons, but they can't seem to get over the hump. Right. And that begs the question, what other quarterbacks that have been great, that have had regular season success, that have had some postseason success, what other quarterbacks have been tied to a head coach or a general manager when they're not seeing true success? And I beg you, go look at history. It doesn't happen. Right. And that's because change is needed. Change is so often needed at the NFL, especially when you don't have success. And that's why I think that this game may not be the most important to where somebody's getting fired right after this game, but this game is kind of a microcosm of what their paths are going to be for the rest of the season, because there is a world where both of these guys may potentially be out of a job after this season. So I think that this game is very important. And another reason I think it's important is because obviously looking to the Cincinnati Bengals side, the Zac Taylor side, I think his seat's a little bit warmer than Sean McDermott. I think it's fair to say that because they missed the playoffs the past 2 seasons. And this season, albeit it's a slim chance, I believe it's 7% chance to make the playoffs right now, you still got a chance, right? A 7% chance. You're in the fight. You're in the dance. And it's going to be very difficult, but you got to at least try to run the table, and it starts here on Sunday in Buffalo. So Zac Taylor, Sean McDermott, I think both of these guys have a very tough season that they're about to endure. And like I said, going back to the Sean McDermott side, I understand that this guy has won 6 playoff games in each of his past 6 seasons, or he's won 1 playoff game in each of his past 6 seasons. But who's to say that they don't do it this year? Right? You got the New England Patriots, you got the Denver Broncos, you have some very good wildcard teams that are in the mix. And that's my concern for this Sean McDermott and Buffalo Bills team, because the excuses have kind of run out. You went out and you fired Leslie Frazier. You went out and you fired multiple coordinators. You went out and you promoted this young, hungry offensive mind in Joe Brady. And now we're discussing a team that is 8-4. We're discussing a team that has been on top of the AFC West or AFC East, and now they're not. The New England Patriots are, and that's what begs the question for the rest of the season. I think that this is a very important season for Sean McDermott, because I do think that there is a possibility that this could be a scapegoat situation if he were to not make the playoffs, or not win a playoff game. And I think that's the one example I also wanted to bring up was that there's a realistic possibility that both these guys are out. It's not like this hasn't happened in the past. It's not like great head coaches haven't been fired. Let's discuss John Fox with the Denver Broncos, right? That guy was in Denver for 4 seasons. Every single season was a winning season. So the organization could say, yeah, we won. We made the playoffs. But John Fox lost that playoff game his final year in Denver. And that was an abysmal loss. That was a loss that you can pin on the head coach. That was a loss that you can say, hey, your late game management was the reason why we lost. And what did they do? Canned him, brought in Gary Kubiak, and they won the Super Bowl the next season. And another example, you can go look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, albeit early in the 2000s, but they had a very, very, very good team. Tony Dungy, legendary head coach, was their coach. He was there for 6 years, I believe. And he went and they made the playoffs, and they made the playoffs, and they made it again and again. But the thing that they didn't do is they didn't play complementary football. He was known for a great defense, dominant defense. The year before, they went out and they fired their offense coordinator, Mike Shula. Everybody was calling for Tony Dungy's job, but they fired the offensive coordinator. And everybody's saying, well, why don't you fire the man up top? Why don't you fire the head man? They said, hey, we're giving him another shot. So while they had a terrible offense, they said, hey, let's try to make a change. They fired their OC. They made the playoffs. They didn't win a playoff game. What did they do? They went out and said, Tony Dungy, enough is enough. We are going to go and trade for John Gruden. We are going to go make a big move because enough is enough. You're having success. You have the best defense in the NFL, but the offense isn't playing up to standard. And at some point, somebody's got to fall. And Tony Dungy fell. And what do you know? Made the trade for John Gruden, and they won the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying the situations are similar or exactly the same with Cincinnati Bengals, but a lot is on the line this season. I think it starts in Buffalo, and I think it's these two guys have had excuses. But at the end of the day, they have 2 superstar quarterbacks at the helm. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Neither one of them have a Super Bowl win, and one of them hasn't even won the AFC, and he's 8 years into his NFL career. So this game is a very, very big game. And if you guys want more of our Bengals discussion, make sure you guys go check out State of the Jungle on our channel. But I want to go over quickly to some NFL predictions for this week. I've got 5 predictions for you guys. And if you guys have any predictions, you guys can drop them down in the chat below. But there are a couple games I want to discuss and a couple quick tidbits I think are extremely crucial. Number 1 is the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Indianapolis Colts. This is a very fun game, but this is something that I've circled last year. I circled the year before, and I did it the year before. It is the Indianapolis Colts have struggled badly when they head to Jacksonville. And not just badly, they have 9 straight losses in Jacksonville. 9 straight. And I look at this game as a very important game for the division. These two teams are at the top of the AFC South. I'm very confident saying this. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars beat and dominate this Indianapolis Colts team. I think this game is a 10-point game, and I think the Jaguars win this. And this could be a shock to some people. The Jaguars are currently underdogs in this game, but I'm very confident that the Jaguars win. And not only that, but everybody's favorite running back right now, Jonathan Taylor, I'm out on him for this game. I am completely out on him, and I think this isn't being talked about enough because teams have kind of found the formula to this Indianapolis Colts team. If you stop Jonathan Taylor, you win the game. In their 3 losses in the past 4 games, what do you know? Jonathan Taylor rushed for less than 4 yards per carry, and I think that's crucial, right? I think that's crucial because it gives you a starting point on how to beat them. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have the best run defense in the entire league. I think the Jaguars go out and dominate the Indianapolis Colts. Number 2, I think Tyler Shuck for the New Orleans Saints. I think he goes and upsets the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this may come as a shock to some people, but this guy's played good, right? He was their 2nd-round pick. Everybody was trashing him on in the preseason. He's thrown a couple interceptions so far through his time, but he's looked good. He's looked good against the Miami Dolphins. He had a win against the Carolina Panthers, and he's doing it with not a lot. Alvin Kamara is out. They got Chris Olave, but Rashid Shaheed is out. But this team is scrappy, the New Orleans Saints. And I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have this aura around them to where they are, Baker Mayfield, they're this underdog team, but they have not looked great recently. Baker Mayfield is currently hurt. He's currently, dealing with an injury. He hasn't looked great the past couple weeks. And I think Tyler Shough goes into Tampa Bay, throws for 250, 2 touchdowns, and shocks the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I think that this is a spot that not a lot of people expect the New Orleans Saints to look good, but I'm very excited to actually watch this guy. And I think the Saints are excited as well. And I think he's got a very good chance to go out and shock the NFL in this game. Number 3, Breece Hall and the New York Jets dominate the Miami Dolphins. Once again, some people may say, oh, well, this isn't a shock. Yes, it is a shock because the New York Jets are currently underdogs. And I think Breece Hall goes out, has 100 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns against the Miami Dolphins. This is a team of the Dolphins we've watched closely on the show. We've talked about Tua Tagovailoa. We've talked about Mike McDaniel. And I hate to say it, but this is a team, they've got a trend and they've got a sentiment and they've got something with them. They don't win in low-scoring games. They don't win in low, cold, tough weather games, whether it's windy, whether it's rain, whether it's snow. This isn't how this team is built. They're built for speed. They're built for quickness. They're built on the perimeter. And they're not built in the trenches. And that's what the New York Jets are currently attempting to do, at least on the offense side of the ball. They have a dominant right tackle. They have a dominant left tackle. The Dolphins will not be able to get a pass rush. They traded away one of their star pass rushers, Jalen Phillips. I am very confident saying this. The New York Jets are going to go and dog the Miami Dolphins. I think Breece Hall goes out and has a massive, massive, massive game. Number 4. This is the game that a lot of people are circling. It's a game and a battle of the two teams that kind of suck, but it's the Cleveland Browns and the Tennessee Titans. I think Shedeur Sanders makes a statement in this game, and I think that this is the most ironic outcome, right? And I think oftentimes in the NFL, the most ironic outcome is the most likely outcome. And I think Shedeur Sanders goes out, throws for 250, 2 touchdowns, and the Tennessee Titans defense sucks. The Cleveland Browns have a great rushing attack with Quinshon Judkins. I'm a big, big, big fan of the Cleveland Browns this week. They are 5-point favorites. I think they win by 7 points. I think Myles Garrett has 3 sacks on Cam Ward, and Shedeur Sanders goes for 250 and 2 touchdowns in a big win. And the final one I got before we head over to Fantasy Football Fridays is Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren has a career game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just said the Jaguars are going to win, but that puts the Colts in a positive or a negative game script rather. And I think Tyler Warren is in a perfect spot. Brock Bowers dominated the Jaguars. Travis Kelce dominated the Jaguars. Trey McBride dominated the Jaguars. These are guys who had 7 or more receptions, 80 or more yards, and at least 1 touchdown against the Jaguars. I think Tyler Warren goes out, has 7 receptions, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Jaguars. He's one of my favorite guys for this week. And we will be coming back to the show on Monday, looking at some of these predictions, saying, hey, you were probably right on some of these, and we will see. But once again, we appreciate everybody tuning in. If you guys can, drop a like on this video, turn on post notifications for more. But Mercer, I want to get to our Fantasy Football Fridays. This is what a lot of people came here for, right? Even myself, I made fantasy playoffs in one of my league, but I need a little bit of help. So let me bring in my guys, Steve and Mike, into the chat. Steve, Mike, how we doing, boys?
Morning, Daniel. How are you?
I'm good, man. Steve, how you doing?
How's it going? Doing good.
It's going good, man. It's going good. So you guys know how we roll here. Once again, if you guys are watching this, drop your guys' questions down below. These guys are going to give their 2 favorite starts, 1 of their sits, and we'll answer you guys' questions. But we'll go a little bit from left to right here. Mike, start us off. Who is a guy that you are hammering into your lineups that could potentially save somebody's playoff hopes this week?
Yeah, I think this one is a layup, but I just want to make sure people aren't overthinking it. Marvin Harrison Jr. has missed practice with a heel injury Wednesday and Thursday, opening the door for Michael Wilson to once again function as the Arizona Cardinals wide receiver 1. And he has been absolutely ridiculous in the 2 games where he's been able to do that. Wide receiver 1 finishes, fantasy wide receiver 1 finishes in both of those games. Ridiculous volume, production to back it up. And he saw 33 targets between those two games. That's not sustainable, but I think just the underlying target earning metrics are encouraging. 30.8% of the target share in those 2 games. And so I think just expecting him to command 25% of the targets just in any given game where Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't on the field is completely reasonable. And we've seen this team be incredibly pass heavy with Jacoby Brissett under center, and they're going into a game against the Rams where they're 8.5-point underdogs. So I expect this to be a very, very pass heavy game script for the Arizona Cardinals this week. And Jacoby Brissett has attempted at least 40 passes in 4 consecutive games, which is just truly bonkers. But I wouldn't be shocked if he hits that number once again this week. So I think this is just very much a volume-driven play, and you just jam him into your lineup, especially in PPR leagues, and just hope he gets there on just a boatload of targets and receptions.
Awesome. And Steve, before we get to you, I just wanted to quickly mention as well, Malik Wright is obviously not on the show. We mentioned it on State of the Jungle. He's currently dealing with death in his family, in his immediate family. And like I said, we wanted to wish our prayers, and he's going to be back on Monday's show. And it's obviously, we carry the torch on the show, but once again, we had a lot of people asking. So just want to make that very clear. And we're sending our best wishes, and the boys are trying to hold it down in place of Malik for today. But Steve, who you got for your favorite start of the week?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what you said earlier in the show with the Colts versus Jaguars. I think that the Colts are also going to have a really tough time because that Jags defense has been really strong, and Jonathan Taylor often limits the pass catchers because he's just so good that the Colts don't really need to throw the ball. But obviously you have Tyler Warren. And outside of that, I still think Michael Pittman is a viable flex option. He hasn't the matchup on paper with 15th most fantasy points per game against wide receivers is, fine enough. But I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where I think the Jaguars could go ahead early, and the Colts aren't just going to be able to run the ball. Daniel Jones has been an efficient passer, and I think when he's looking to distribute the ball, Tyler Warren's been great. But Michael Pittman, though he hasn't been as good recently, he had 8 targets and 13.7 points, just in week 12. And he had a bunch of big games early on in the year. So I think with Jonathan Taylor kind of taking away from everyone, Pittman, Downs, and even Warren have kind of cooled down a bit. But I think here's a really strong week for Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren as well to really bounce back and have a really strong week for your fantasy football playoffs.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. And this is one of the games that I was circling, just excited to watch. But Mike, let's get to your second favorite start of the week, and we'll get to a couple of these questions below.
Well, I think we're going to keep talking about Jags Colts here because I've got a few Jags left on my list.
Yeah.
In regards to a start, I do think you can be excited about what Jacoby Myers brings to the table. He's been in Jacksonville for 4 weeks now. The last 3 weeks, he's really just assumed a full-time role, running 85+% of the routes, and he's looked really, really good. In those last 3 weeks, he's eclipsed a 20% target share every single time. He hit 27% a couple of weeks back, and you see the eye test. He checks that box as well. He ripped off a 50-something yard reception last week, and then just a couple of plays later, Liam Cohen draws up basically a designed look for Jacoby Myers. They run a bunch formation. The other two guys run a clear out. Jacoby Myers sneaks out underneath and catches an easy touchdown against the Titans. So I just think he's a really good fit for this Liam Cohen offense. A lot of people were hoping he would take on that slot role. That hasn't been the case. He's been playing mostly on the outside, but against the Colts, I think that's a pretty solid matchup. Sauce Gardner isn't expected to play. That leaves Charvarius Ward responsible on the outside for Brian Thomas Jr. and Jacoby Myers. And generally, obviously, the arrival of Sauce Gardner switches things up. But with Sauce Gardner, even with Sauce Gardner in the mix, the Colts have allowed the 4th most receptions to wide receivers lined up on the outside this season. So they've been vulnerable on the outside. Like I said, obviously Sauce Gardner changes that in the long term, but he's not there this week. So we can see this same old Colts defense. I know Ward has also missed some time this year, but this is a favorable matchup. I do think that Jacoby Myers is going to be able to get there. He's shown that he can be a consistent piece of this offense. So I wouldn't think that last week is a fluke, even though a good amount of his production got there on that 50-yard play and the touchdown. But the numbers don't lie, and I think the numbers show that Jacoby Myers is a reliable piece for fantasy football.
Bro, this guy is the definition of consistent. I mean, if you want to look, caught 6 of 6 for 90, 4 of 6 for 50, 5 of 6 for 64. He's reliable. This dude is exactly what you expect and a little bit more sometimes. But question from Peach Kreischer, he said, Jordan Addison, Alec Pierce, who would you guys start this week and why?
I go Alec Pierce just because, like we talked about, that Colts game. Now, obviously, you have Warren, and I do like Pittman, so that leaves few targets for Pierce. But Pierce doesn't really win with targets. He wins with big plays deep down the field. And it's honestly not that I love Alec Pierce because, there are only so many points to go around. I'm not sure this game is going to be an absolute shootout on the same level as like a Bills-Chiefs like shootout level game. But Jordan Addison, I just do not trust him in the slightest with the Vikings. I mean, Justin Jefferson has been struggling. Yeah. So are we really kind of sold on Jordan Addison each week? They're both similar players, but I would still bet on the Colts offense. Daniel Jones, with whatever injury he has going on, is still significantly better than a healthy J.J. McCarthy at this point.
I love it. Love it. So, Steve, let's get to your second favorite start, and then we'll get to two of our sits.
Yeah, this is a guy that I like just because of matchup. Zay Flowers, the Ravens and Lamar, and even Zay last week have been struggling, but overall, Zay is a very talented player, which has allowed him to be pretty consistent. I mean, he's been hovering around 11, 12 points, and again, this is a flex option. I think the Ravens and Zay could have a really big bounce back. Zay in specific, I just like the matchup with wide receivers because the Steelers have allowed the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Yep. Their secondary has just simply not been great, and Zay is a very talented player. He gets open pretty much at will at this point, so I could really see him torching this Steelers defense. And if Lamar, I think there's a high floor, and Lamar's still a great quarterback. I know he's injured. I know he hasn't looked great. But if Lamar can just look slightly better than he has been, I think Zay easily gets to a 15, 16, even possibly 20-point game, and that could be massive if he's in your flex spot.
Awesome. And we had a question from James O'Hare. This is you're probably in a good spot if you're discussing James Cook or Chase Brown. But who would you guys start if you guys had to pick one of those two? I think both those guys have great games, but if you had to pick one, who would you pick?
I think both of them are going up against defenses that are very, very vulnerable against the run. But I think it's James Cook easily. I mean, we saw them with both of their tackles out last week. I believe Deion Dawkins is set to be back this week after a concussion. I'm not sure about Spencer Brown, but without their tackles, they just decided we're going to pound the football on the ground. I think 32 carries for James Cook, and obviously a very, very high powered offense. I think the track record and with Browns splitting touches with 𝗦𝗫𝗄𝗏 in his return and him taking away a meaningful amount of the work. I just think Cook is both the higher ceiling and higher floor.
Awesome. All right, Mike, well, let's keep it with you. Who's the guy that you're fading this week? Who's the guy that you're putting your stamp on? That dude is sitting his ass on the bench. Who's that guy?
Yeah, if Jakobi Meyers is Mr. Consistency in Jacksonville, I fear Travis Etienne is the polar opposite. This has been a backfield that's been in flux for the last month or so. If you keep a close eye on this stuff, a couple of weeks back, everyone was certain of the fact that 𝗬𝗁𝗠𝗏𝗠𝗠's time was coming. He was going to overtake the backfield. Yep. And then that completely flipped the script just a week later. We've seen Travis Etienne's usage over the last couple of weeks just dramatically fluctuate between 47 and 64% of snaps. I know that doesn't sound big, but that is actually a really, really wide range in terms of his snap share. But the really, really concerning part is what Tutin's doing at the goal line. Last week, Tutin assumed the goal line role. Etienne did not play a single snap inside of the 10-yard line last week. It was all 𝗬𝗁𝗠𝗏 or LaQuint Allen. And there were some quotes floating around about how much they love Tutin in short yardage situations. So that obviously it could change from week to week, but that is a huge red flag moving forward for Travis Etienne. And then coupled with that, he just really doesn't have enough of a pass catching role to make up for the fact if he's not being used at the goal line. Only an 8.9% target share on the year. We know in third and long situations, they're just clear passing down situations, they're going to go to the rookie in 𝗦𝗡𝗏𝗏. So there's just not a lot of outcomes to where Travis Etienne just gets there for you this week. Obviously, he could rip off a long touchdown, and I look like I've got my foot in my mouth. But it's just the high value touches, the opportunities that generate fantasy points, receptions and touches near the goal line. Like the path to Etienne getting those is really, really hazy at this point in time. So I would be looking for other options personally.
Awesome. I will take your advice on that, and I will sit Travis Etienne on my bench. Steve, who's your favorite sit of the week this week?
Yeah, sadly, you're 100% right about Etienne, but I can't sit him yet because I'm not trusting Amari and Hampton. But hopefully for the fantasy playoffs, I can make that swap. My sit is going to be AD Mitchell, and I actually stashed him in my own league because I think there is potential with him. But he's one of those guys where the sample size is just not enough yet. The Jets are not an offense that you can trust with Tyrod Taylor at the helm. And yes, AD Mitchell looked great last week, but he's one of those guys where I think everything needs to be going right for you to start him. It needs to be a clear, great matchup. The offense needs to be showing clear signs of improvement, and AD Mitchell probably needs at least another week of proven production. And the main hang-up I have right here is the matchup with the Dolphins, allowing the 25th most points per game to wide receivers this year. Not a great number, even though they have struggled on the year. I just don't trust AD Mitchell yet, and if it was a fantastic matchup, it was a clear spot for him to smash. Maybe I throw him in my flex, but it's just so risky in the fantasy playoffs when you kind of can't afford for him to do what he has been doing earlier on the year and just give you a dud game. So maybe he dominates again, and you can throw him in your flex spot if you have like an injury, or you're really just a good matchup. But I'm not quite there in AD Mitchell, even though for my own fantasy team, I hopefully just becomes the best player in the NFL and dominates for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, he's definitely been all over the place, especially on NFL Twitter as well. But before we leave, how are you guys' fantasy teams doing? Are you guys approaching the playoffs? You guys out of the playoffs? Talk to me about you guys' league first.
My main team is that I've been talking about on the show with a few trades and whatnot. We are 9-4. We do 4. It's 12-team league, but we do 4 teams make it to the playoffs. So it's hard to get in, and we do 2 weeks. So our playoffs start this week, and I'm a 10-point favorite on ESPN so far. So
wow,
look, even with Travis Etienne in the
spread
lineup,
or what?
Huh?
Would you take that spread or what? You think you win by 10 or more?
I would. I like my team, even with Travis Etienne in the lineup. I think it's hopefully Hampton replaces him in week 15.
All right, well, we'll come back to this clip next week, and we'll see how you do. What about you, Mike?
With as many teams as I have, there are some spots where I'm on the bubble, so I will be watching those closely. But personally, I'm just gearing up for some Bengals and Buckeyes football this weekend. Steve, I don't know if you guys, the Fighting Illini, know, but the Big Ten Championship is this weekend. So I will be watching that. And then must-win game for the Bengals on Sunday.
Love it. Love it. But as always, you guys can follow these guys on Twitter. Go down below. Check them out. We appreciate you guys. And Mike, Steve, hope you guys have a good weekend, and we will see you guys next Friday for Fantasy Football Friday. So appreciate our boys for appreciate our boys for tuning in and giving their advice. And now we switch it over to the UFC. We got a big card, and as always, we will have our full bets, 𝗦𝗡𝗏𝗏's bets on the TWSN Patreon. You guys can go down to the description down below. Check out his full bets. As always, last week didn't have a card. The week before had a great week. So if you guys want our full bets, go down below to the description. But let me bring in our guy, 𝗦𝗢𝗍𝗏, for some UFC talk. And let's get after it, Evan. How you doing?
I'm good, Daniel. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. We got ourselves a big card. I know we're gearing up for it. I know, this is the last pay-per-view of the year, and potentially last pay-per-view of who knows until we have another pay-per-view. But, man, let's just get this rolling. We'll talk about some of these bigger fighters and bigger fights in a little bit. But, bro, early prelims are stacked.
It's all
Talk
stacked,
to me about the first fight of the night. we will go down to Muhammad Naimov versus Myron Santos. You got any lean on this? What do you think about the first fight of the night?
Yeah, I've got a lean on this one. I wouldn't say it's my most confident lean of the night, but I do like Myron Santos in this one. He's closing in at a 3-1 favorite. I don't necessarily love the money line on that because I
Yeah.
do think there's a path to victory for Naimov. Naimov's a very good wrestler, but I just think Santos, he seems to be getting better. That fight he had with Sadiq Yusuff was very impressive. I think the best bet on this one, if I had to go with it, would be Santos by decision, which is at like plus 100. So you can basically get that at even money. Naimov's a tough out. I don't think Santos finishes him, but I do think he does enough damage on the feet, especially with how fights are being scored right now, to get the decision win.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, Naimov has had kind of a up and down UFC career so far. He had that big fight in his first UFC fight. I agree. I think that I like this fight to go to decision. Fight number 2 is another one I want to discuss. Mansour Abdur-Malik has been on one. This guy is, taking the UFC by storm, but he's facing Antonio Tricoli. Who do you like in this fight? Do you think Mansour get this one done very quickly or not?
Yeah, I mean, Abdul Malik's a 14-1 favorite right now. This is there's a reason for that. I will say with him, he's got all the tools to be a rising star. I just didn't necessarily love what I saw in the last one against Cody Brundage. He seemed to, after that first blitz of his didn't work, he kind of seemed a bit lost. He dropped the second round to Cody Brundage, which is why it ended up in a draw after the accidental foul. But I do think Antonio Tricoli is a step down from Cody Brundage. I think this is where Malik is going to get back on track. I really do like him to win this by round 1 knockout at plus 105.
So you're going round 1 knockout.
Yep.
I think that there's value there for sure. To be honest, I'm going to go round 2. And I
Okay.
think that that's where I like this to kind of go a little bit beyond the distance of what's he's been doing. I mean, the past 3 of his past 4 have actually gone into round 2. I agree. He's an absolute beast, but I think that this is by far and away his toughest UFC fight. But another fight that's surprisingly on the early prelims, Jalen Turner versus Edson Barboza. Who do you got in this fight? And is there anything betting wise you like?
Yeah, I mean, I love this fight. I'm not sure how this is on the early prelims. I mean, Edson Barboza, kind of a fan's legend of this sport. Never a champion, but everybody loves Edson Barboza. Turner's probably been one of the most frustrating fighters I've ever had to watch because he has all the tools to be a future champion, but he's 14-9 and has some pretty bad losses on his record. I think if this fight was a little over a year ago, I actually may have taken the upset in Barboza, but it just seems now he's just a little slower than it seems like time's finally starting to catch up with Edson Barboza. I'm going to take Turner's word for it. I'm going to say he's gotten himself back in the right mental space to try and make a better run at this. He does have a pretty clear path here. Barboza's takedown defense is not great. Turner's got all the length in the world. As long as he doesn't try and out kick this guy, I think he should win this. I do still think Barboza has enough durability to get through this, especially if Turner takes his easiest path to victory. So I don't necessarily love like a hammer on this fight, but I do like a sprinkle on Jalen Turner by decision at plus 650.
Totally agree. And while I think that Edson Barboza can win this fight, I agree on the decision side. And the reason why I look at that is Edson Barboza in UFC as well. I tend to look at the trends of, hey, how's this guy been fighting? I just remember the Edson Barboza fight, main event, Sadiq Yusuff. Edson's a veteran. This guy's gone to decision, I believe, his past 3 fights. I think that this is, styles make fights, and I do think that this style kind of aligns towards heading to decision. And if not, maybe Jalen could potentially try to get it done early. But I agree. I like the decision look. The final fight on the early prelims is a very intriguing one: Marvin Vettori versus Bruno Ferreira. This is a contrast of styles. I mean, you look at Marvin Vettori, that guy has went to decision his last 7 fights, and Bruno on the other side, this dude has fought 17 times in the UFC. Ask me how many have gone to decision.
I have no idea, Daniel. How many?
0. None. So I'm curious here where you align on this. I think it's intriguing. how that is playing out. I'm curious to hear which side of the fence you lay on.
Yeah, this is a great fight. Marvin Vettori, he's on a cold streak right now. He's lost his last 3. To be fair, it's to some very top shelf competition. Marvin Vettori has fought the who's who of the 2020s middleweight division.
Yep.
And now he's got to fight down, and he's fighting Bruno Ferreira. I went back and forth on this. I don't necessarily have a confident lean or what I would call something to place your money on. But if I have to side, I normally side with momentum. So I am going to take the slight upset here. I'm going to take Bruno Ferreira. And I am going to say, if I have to go with it, I don't think he's the first to crack Vettori's chin. I just think he does enough damage to get this done on the scorecards, because Vettori's defense in his last 3 have just looked so rough. I mean, he got pounded by Cannonier. He was a bloody mess after his fight with Brendan Allen. He got beat up by Roman Dolidze, and he's kind of abandoned that wrestling game. I think this is kind of a slugfest, but until Vettori goes down, I'm not going to bet on him to lose by knockout. So I'm going to take Ferreira by decision, but I'm not placing any money on it.
Yeah, I'm complete on the opposite side of this with you, to be honest with you. I like Marvin Vettori in this. This is a fight that when I first looked at this, I kind of circled a little bit, because it's like, oh, Bruno's dominant finisher. And I look at this and I think, while I agree with you, and I think it's fair to point out, he got dogged at times by Cannonier. You look at the fight, I believe it was against Roman Dolidze. It looked like a mess in his last fight against Brendan Allen. I think that he's fought by far and away the past 3 fights much tougher competition. And Bruno, he's looked sloppy at times. And I think his fight, I believe it was against Arman Petrosyan. He beat him by submission, but Arman, he left a lot to be desired in that fight. So if I were to go on one side, I'm very confident Marvin wins this fight, and I think that this goes a decision. Give me Marvin Vettori by decision. The first fight of the prelims is 𝗬𝗎𝗕𝗏 versus 𝗫𝗏. Another banger of a fight. Where do you lie on this one?
Awesome fight. I mean, both these guys are on, sizable win streaks right now, or I should say undefeated streaks, because Sadikov has a draw in there. But this is an awesome fight. I mean, both these guys could easily be, I think, top 10 in a couple years. I think they just have the styles to do it. But right now, I'm gonna side with 𝗫𝗏. I'm gonna take the slight favorite here. I just think he right now has the more well-rounded game. He's gonna have the length on the feet, and he's really shown an improvement in the grappling, especially against Mike Davis in his last fight. Mike Davis is a really good wrestler, and he was able to stop him from initiating any wrestling exchanges. And really, 𝗫𝗏 was the guy who initiated the grappling. I think he can control Sadikov from getting too far inside, and he can mix in some grappling. And I think 𝗫𝗏 gets this one done, probably on the scorecards, but I just like his money line at -145.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite leans of this entire card, and I'm probably gonna hammer this. While this is, a fight between 2 guys who are very talented, I'm taking 𝗫𝗏 in this one, and I'm not even looking back. Listen, Naseem is a beast. Naseem has looked good at times, but I'll just point to 2 exact fights that I was watching, and I was like, "Ooh, like, what's going on here?" It was the 𝗫𝗏 fight. I
Yep.
believe he got dropped, or if not, that was a very close fight to where I can't remember if it was the beginning of the fight he lost or towards the end. 𝗫𝗏 was, coming on strong. But I look at that, and that even the Nicholas Mata one, while it was early in the fight, Nicholas hurt him bad,
Bad.
and he weathered the storm, of course, and he won the fight. But this is a guy in 𝗫𝗏 who I personally faded. I faded his fight against Jai Herbert. I faded another one of his fight. This guy has a lot of tools, and I agree with you. The fact that he got his wrestling on board, I think he's a more well-rounded fighter. I'm taking 𝗫𝗏 in this, and I'm not even looking back in this one. A couple more fights on the prelims. Terrence McKinney versus Chris Duncan is a banger. Any Terrence McKinney fight is a banger. This dude, if you guys don't know, is a guy, he just finishes fights or he gets finished. But Evan, who do you got and why?
I have to say, I love Terrence McKinney, but I think Chris Duncan in this might be my bet of the night at -165. I love Terrence McKinney. Anytime I see Terrence McKinney pop up on a card, I know I'm in for something fun. I just think Chris Duncan is what people want Terrence McKinney to be. Chris Duncan's never afraid of a brawl. He wants to. He'll want that kind of fight. But he's just more technical. He's more durable. He's got a better ground game. Sure, I think McKinney's probably the better athlete of the two. So there's always a chance that that lightning blitz in the first minute of the fight gets it done for McKinney. But Duncan's been consistently durable. I think he makes it past that first blitz and then takes the fight over. A lot of times, what we see in a Terrence McKinney fight when that doesn't work out for him. I got Chris Duncan by finish, but I'll take the money line at -165.
Yeah, I'm just gonna watch this one, to be honest with you. And the reason why I look at this and the odds are crazy for the distance, and I think that's where the most value is supposed to be, right? Because these guys are both crazy finishers. I mean, Chris Duncan is going in there and he's finishing people quick. And he's also in his 2 losses. He got submitted in round 1 and he got TKO'd, knocked out in round 2. So these guys are going in there, like you said, going in for a brawl. But the over under is 0.5. The over under is 2.5 minutes. So I'm personally staying away from the over under, but this is one I'm just excited to watch. So
Yeah.
another one, Grant Dawson versus Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres, another guy. I mean, 9, 10 fights, finish in the first round. This might be a fantastic card for
Yeah.
quick fight ending finishes in round 1. But who do you got, Grant Dawson or Manuel Torres?
I think I see both. I see both sides of this one. I think there's one of two ways this ends. You can't look past Grant Dawson's loss to Bobby Green. He got clipped by Bobby Green. Manuel Torres could obviously do the same thing. He's a great fighter. I think his last loss was to Bahamondes in a striker's war. And his takedown defense has held up so far. But I was looking at the names that Torres has fought, and I just can't put anyone in the same tier as Grant Dawson's wrestling. He hasn't fought a wrestler like that. There's always a chance that Torres goes out and sparks him, but I'm gonna take Grant Dawson. And if I'm gonna bet on it, I'm gonna sprinkle on Dawson to win by a decision, which I think is incredibly undervalued at +450. I think that's. I mean, I looked at those. The highest finish prop, the highest prop for fight end is Dawson by TKO at -105, and his last TKO win was a ground and pound win, which I think Torres has got enough to get past that, but I've got Dawson by decision at +450.
Yeah, I like that. I think for me personally, I think the value is probably on the Dawson side, but to be honest with you, I think that there is value looking at how Torres is fought, and I just look at how he's lost too. Like, this dude is a brawler. This dude is going in there, and it is round 1. It is round 1, and I think there's value on Grant Dawson. I also think there's value on Grant Dawson's submission. Like, this is a guy who we know is going to take it to the ground, and I think the Bobby King Green fight could play out, sure, and you could take Manuel Torres in round 1. I think that's a possibility, but I think there's also a possibility where he gets his ground game going early, Grant Dawson, and he gets a round 1 submission. So if I were to take anything on that, I'm going probably a little sprinkle on round 1 submission, Grant Dawson. But let's head over to the main card and hit some of these. Jan Blachowicz versus Bogdan Guskov. I mean, this is a banger of fight as well. Who do you got?
Yeah, I didn't love this fight when I saw it got made, but I understand why it's there. Jan Blachowicz, he's on a 2-fight skid. Guskov's on a surge. They're trying to push a new light heavyweight contender in there. Light heavyweight probably getting a little stale right now, especially with Pereira talking about moving up to heavyweight to fight John Jones, and it's just he's already beaten 𝗬𝗓𝗄𝗏 twice. So they're trying to get a new contender in there. Blachowicz, I think Blachowicz he's proven to be the more well-rounded fighter of the two. He's got very good wrestling. Guskov's takedown defense is a little shaky. But for me, I really can't look past the momentum here. Blachowicz has not won a fight now in 3.5 years. This fight reminds me a lot of Alexander Rakic versus Azamat Murzakanov, where we had a guy who hadn't won in almost 4 years, who has more accomplishments, but is going against somebody who's just going to look to take your head off. And that's what Guskov's going to do. Blachowicz could easily find a way to take him down and grind out a very Jan Blachowicz style win. But my lean is that Guskov does find a finish and probably seals the career of a 43-year-old legend that this sport isn't very kind to.
Mm. I don't know where I lean on this one, to be honest. I think that this is, I think you put it best, and I think that there's a real chance that 𝗬𝗏𝗏 goes in there and he wins. And this is start of kind of the trend I'm sensing. Like, bro, these guys that I'm looking at, it's finishes. Like
Yeah,
𝗬𝗏𝗏, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll look at this. Every one of his fights ends in a
it's a finish.
finish. Like
It
this
is.
guy
Yep.
is like a dominant finisher, or he gets finished. I'm gonna be looking to the 𝗬𝗢𝗄𝗏 side, to be honest with you. I think the
Yeah.
value, if you're taking 𝗬𝗏𝗏, is probably by finish, and it's probably, like you said, the route of this guy goes in there and he's too much for Blachowicz and probably puts his lights out. But 43-year-old Blachowicz is a veteran. He has fought the best of the best recently, and I think there's value on him. And to be honest, I think there's value on a finish on the Jan Blachowicz side. He's going to go in there and face a guy who's not the caliber fighter that Pereira is, not the caliber fighter that Glover Teixeira was, not the caliber fighter of any of his past 5 opponents. I think there's value on a finish by Jan Blachowicz. But the next fight, Henry Cejudo versus Peyton Talbot. We got Henry Cejudo announcing he's probably going to retire after this fight. Who do you got and why?
Isn't this like the third time Henry Cejudo has said he's going to retire? I feel like I hear this after every fight or before every fight. This is it for Henry Cejudo, and just it never ends up being it for Henry Cejudo. But first thing I want to say about this fight is I hate this line. I really do. Peyton Talbot at 3-1 against Henry Cejudo just feels wrong. Talbot, but that being said, I do lean towards the side of Peyton Talbot, but much more on like I thought this fight would be like -140, -150. I just can't I can't quite shake that Raoni Barcelos loss from January where he got out wrestled there, and knowing how good of a wrestler Henry Cejudo is, it just makes this a closer fight than I think the odds say. But I think the key here is going to be the size advantage for Talbot mixed with the size and speed are all on the Talbot side here. Cejudo's probably not in the same shape as he was when he was dominating flyweight and bantamweight. Talbot made drastic improvements in that fight with Felipe Lima. He went against a grappler, was able to stay on his feet for most of the fight or even initiate grappling exchanges. I highly doubt he initiates grappling with Cejudo. He probably shouldn't. And also, Cejudo, as of late, especially after his first retirement, has fallen in love with his hands. He hasn't been as wrestling heavy. He's looked to keep the fight on its feet. So if he fights with the same style he's fought in his last couple fights, I think Talbot's natural striking advantage is just going to be too much for him to handle. But I don't have a bet for this one, but I'm going to take Peyton Talbot.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not betting this one. I just don't know where the true value is on this line, and I can't. I agree. I can't shake the feeling, and Malik put me onto this to where when guys are retiring, it's like it might not be best to take him. I mean, you
Yeah.
look at the Dustin Poirier fight versus Max Holloway. He even announced before that, like, or after he said, "Yo, hey, like I felt in there, like I felt good, but." He was getting pieced up by Max Holloway. And
Yeah.
I think that's a common trend with these guys who are retiring. You go in there, you just embrace it. You embrace the fight. But Peyton Talbot's up and comer, and I think that there's not a lot of value. I mean, sure, maybe value on Henry Cejudo decision win. He can try to do the same
Yeah.
thing that Peyton Talbot's only loss was, just take him out and try to grind him. But we will have our full best bets for these. As always, once again, Malik has his bets on the TWSM Patreon. If you guys are watching and want some UFC content, a little UFC bets to make a little bit money on this weekend, go to the Patreon down below. We got 3 more fights. Brandon Moreno, Tatsuro Taira. I'm going to start this one off. I think Brandon Moreno wins this fight. And I look at this at plus money, and I think that maybe I'm falling into the trap of a guy that I've liked and a guy that I've gone head-to-head with Malik on, and I've lost because I've been a fan of Brandon Moreno, but he's looked good recently, and I think that he is the much more well-rounded fighter, and I just can't shake the feeling for this that I'm getting a guy at plus money who I've seen at the championship level, and I don't think is washed. He's, 31 years old? And I see a guy in Tatsuro Taira where I remember watching the Brandon Royval fight, and I was like, okay, like Brandon Moreno is a weird, funky striker. And this isn't like you get 5 rounds. You have 3 rounds to figure this guy out. And he's weird. That's what it is. His striking is weird. He's here, and he's throwing. It's a weird fight. So for me, I'm taking Brandon Moreno. Give me his money line at plus money. I like this. Who do you like?
Yeah, Daniel, I think I'm going to go against you in this one.
I love it.
I love Brandon Moreno as much as anybody. He's fun to watch. I don't think he's washed either. I can definitely see a way where he wins this. But I was watching some past film on him and looking at his numbers, and something that really jumped out on me is Brandon Moreno, excellent grappler. He's got good offensive wrestling. He's got good submissions, and his takedown defense is surprisingly bad. He just doesn't have. And when he gets on his back, he's far more content with throwing up submission attempts than he is with trying to get back up. 𝗬𝗪𝗏 is an absolute blanket. This dude, when he gets you down, it's like watching 𝗦𝗫𝗀𝗐𝗏, any of those, like watching Demetrius Johnson. These guys don't get back up when he's on top of you. And if he hadn't made the necessary striking improvements and was just a solely one-dimensional fighter like Amir Albazi was in Brandon Moreno's last fight, I would side with Brandon Moreno. But I think 𝗬𝗪𝗏's got enough, especially in terms of kicking. His straight punches have looked good as of late. I think he's got enough confidence in his hands that he can stay there for a minute and two, try and mix it up with Moreno a little bit, and then get a takedown and do some damage from top. I like how close this line is. I think that's very representative of this fight. But my lean is with 𝗬𝗪𝗏 at -130.
I like it, a little head-to-head, and I think that I agree at the one point of his takedown defense is a little bit weird, and it kind of goes back to the point of even like a JDM, where JDM's takedown defense is phenomenal, but it's the high guard. And when you got the high guard, Brandon Moreno has a lot of times, especially if you get him on his back foot, that's where you will see success. I just think he's going to push the pace, and we will see. We will find out. But two more fights, Alexandre Pantoja versus Joshua Van, championship fight. Who do you like? This is a fantastic fight, and this is one where if you look at the resumes, right, you may be saying, well, Joshua Van, how the hell is he here? Who do you like? And I'm actually curious to see which pick here.
Man, I love this fight. This has got to be up. This is one of my most anticipated fights of the year, and I've always been a flyweight believer. I love the flyweight division. I think they put on some of the best fights. And this fight is this is just a war. Pantoja, probably the most dominant title reign so far in the UFC out of any active champion. And Josh Van, brand new title challenger for him, young upstart. He's 24. There's so many great storylines around this fight, and all in my lead up, I said, this is an awesome story for Van, but this is Pantoja. He's never fought anybody like this. And I've switched my pick, and I'm taking Josh Van. I really like him in this fight. I was looking at Pantoja's last few, and really after that fight I go back to that fight with Steve Erceg at UFC 301. Steve Erceg gave him all he could handle, and you could easily make a case that Steve Erceg won that fight. It came down to that 5th round, and it was a close round. And what I really like out of Josh Van is he has shown some incredible takedown defense so far. And I know he hasn't fought somebody like Pantoja, but that takedown defense looks great. His cardio so far has looked great. I think he's the best boxer that Pantoja has faced in this title reign. And when Pantoja can't get you down, he's hittable. I'm not saying he's finishable, but he's hittable. And Josh Van, if anybody's going to hit you, it's going to be Josh Van. This could come down to experience, and Pantoja is just the veteran, and he's got enough ring generalship that he makes Van look like a rookie. But I think this all lines up towards the Pantoja title reign ending. There's been a lot of one-dimensional or suspect wins on Pantoja's run here, but I'm going with Josh Van to become the new flyweight champion at just 24 years old.
Yeah, man. I'm taking the opposite side. And listen, I agree with you. I think the point that I love about Josh Van is this dude is a dominant boxer. Dominant. And I agree. I've watched Joshua Van in his fights, and especially his last fight. Sure, he looked good against Brandon Royval. His boxing is elite. I just can't shake the feeling that when these guys get a title fight, there's not a lot of guys that really win the title, and you can look at it and say, hey, well, that guy's resume wasn't very good. And the guys who did that, whether it's like an Islam Makhachev, sure, maybe even like a JDM, sure, I think those guys weren't facing somebody like Alexandre Pantoja. And especially when I look at Josh Van, respectfully, this is too early, bro. This is too early. He would be 24 years old. I believe that would be the youngest champion in quite some time. I think this is too early for him. And I look at his past couple fights. First off, the Brandon Royval fight was a banger, and that was a scrap. But that's what you're going to get with Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval is a scrap. And it looked like, you know, Brandon Royval was just making some mistakes. And Brandon Royval, I thought, was looking good. And he just got into a dogfight. He got into a war. And I look at that fight, and sure, that was a great fight. But then you can also look at one of my personal favorite fighters in the UFC, Charles Johnson. That dude is, for some reason, one of my favorite fighters. And, bro, he put out Joshua Van. He put him out. And I think that this is something where that's my path to victory for Pantoja. I look at guys like Kai France, who's a phenomenal striker. A lot of times we see these dudes go up in the cage and say, hey, they're a phenomenal striker, but how come when they went up against this guy, they didn't look as great? And I think that the fact that we've seen Van get put by a guy like Charles Johnson, I think this is too early for him. And I think Pantoja is too well-rounded for Joshua Van. And I think that we could see a finish on the side of of Alexandre Pantoja, whether it's him taking him to the ground and really forcing his will and making Joshua Van tired. And the fact that Pantoja has done, you know, this time and time again, I think that there's a real path to victory. I don't think that this fight goes 5 rounds. And I think the real path to victory is in Alexander Pantoja. I could see him potentially finishing this fight by TKO, but I also think Pantoja gets this done by submission. Listen, the one thing I'll say about this too is we've seen this story play out, not with Van, so I'm not discrediting him, but I've seen and I've thought, okay, is this the fight Pantoja loses? The fight against Kai France, obviously, went out there and he submitted him. And I think we've seen this too many times with Pantoja. So I like this, though. Going head to head, how do you think Joshua Van wins?
I think Josh Van gets this by a decision, personally.
Okay.
I think he does enough damage in 3 of these rounds that he takes these rounds. I think Pantoja has proven to be durable enough that he's not going to get put out. If he does, I mean, it's not going to be a submission, but it could be a TKO, especially late. I think when I look back on it with the �rsag fight, I thought he really started to fade down the line, like the cardio, and every shot that �rsag landed seemed to be more significant as the fight went on. So if Van's cardio holds into those championship rounds, I could see a world where he just overwhelms him late and Pantoja just doesn't have enough left in the tank. But I side with the decision side, but I'm putting money on Van's money line at plus 200. I think that's value enough.
I like it. This is a great fight, and like I said, I'm taking Pantoja. We'll see. We got one last fight. This is it, man. Merab versus Petr Yan. I've got some thoughts on this. I mean, I'm excited to see this fight. I'm excited to see Merab fight again. What do you got? Who do you think wins this fight and why?
Yeah, I think just by hearing what you just said there, I think we share the same sentiment here. If I could flip these last 2 fights and make Pantoja and Van the main event, I totally would. Just because we've seen this Merab Yan fight before, and we saw how one-sided it was. And I just don't know how this one goes any differently, if you ask me. Merab, he keeps looking better every time I see him. Yeah. I want it, like, I think you share this, what you just said about Pantoja. Like, is this the fight that Pantoja loses? Could this be it? We thought about maybe Sandhagen outworks him on the feet, and then he just proves you time and time again wrong, and he gets better. He makes it so you can't figure him out. I mean, this Merab just went into a fight with Corey Sandhagen and almost knocked him out. And Corey Sandhagen's an elite striker, maybe the best technical striker in bantamweight behind Sean O'Malley. But Merab went in there, went toe-to-toe with him, and almost knocked him out. The only way I think Petr Yan has a chance here is if Merab has decided that he's fallen in love with his hands, that he thinks he's got it now in his hands. That would be a terrible decision because Yan is a better technical boxer. But that's a big if. I think this is just lining up for another 𝗏𝗏 masterclass, especially because what I've seen out of Jan is the same Jan I've seen over the last few years. And I wasn't impressed with his last fight. He beat Marcus McGee by a 29-28 decision. I mean, Marcus McGee and 𝗏𝗏 are two very different levels of fighting. I think this looks a lot like the first fight, probably a little more exciting because 𝗏𝗏's gotten better. But yeah, I'm taking 𝗏𝗏, and I'm putting money on his line by decision at -195.
Yeah, I want Petr Yan to look good, and like for championship's sake and for entertainment's sake, you want him to look good. And let me just say this: 𝗏𝗏 is an exciting fighter, at least as of recent, right? His fights have been exciting. He's not really just laying and praying, and a lot of that maybe has to do with the opponents being able to scramble from the bottom. But he's going out there and he's confident. And for me, it wouldn't be right of me to bet on a guy and bet against a guy who's just that confident. I don't see value in this. Petr Yan, for as good as he's kind of looked in the past couple fights, he hasn't finished anybody. He hasn't. Marcus McGee didn't finish him. Song Yudong was a banger fight. He didn't finish him. That's the only way, and that's the realistic way that 𝗏𝗏 is going to lose his belt at some point, is by somebody clipping him. We saw it. Corey Sandhagen a couple good moments. Sean O'Malley had a couple good moments. You've got to be a killer that goes in there and just finishes. And I think Petr Yan, while he's a fantastic boxer, he's a great counter puncher, I just don't see a finishing sequence that he can put together for 𝗏𝗏. And maybe I look like the clown of the day. Maybe he goes out there and does the unthinkable and puts out 𝗏𝗏. But the fact that he's a counter puncher, I can see a world where Petr Yan hurts him bad and 𝗏𝗏 finds a way to get the takedown and recovers. So I think that 𝗏𝗏, I think he wins this fight. And with him being as confident as he is, while Petr Yan has never been finished before, I think we could see another 𝗏𝗏 finish. We saw this at the side of the Sean O'Malley second fight. At some point, these guys get desperate. Petr Yan, when he's on the bottom, he is going to be desperate. And I think that has to do with the psychological fact. And I think there's even a psychological battle being played. Malik and I, we were watching the press conference, and he was showing me one of the videos, and I was listening. And Petr Yan, 𝗏𝗏 was kind of getting under skin. He said, "What you gonna do? December 6th, what you gonna do?" And it's like, I think that Petr Yan is going to be rightfully anxious, and he's going to be rightfully desperate. And I think that this could be a finish on the 𝗏𝗏 side late in this fight. But yeah, man, I think that this is a very exciting card. And once again, we appreciate you being on the show. And for everybody who's watching, we appreciate you guys staying tuned with us through Fantasy Football Friday, through UFC content. As we said, Malik is currently dealing with a family matter, and we send our best wishes to him. But he's going to be back on the show Monday. So for Bengals talk, NFL talk, NBA talk, a little bit of LeBron James action, we got it all for you guys on Monday. So we appreciate everybody for watching the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show. And as always, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. See you guys.
This is 𝗬𝗎